All right, so it's June 15th, 2024, and this is called Releasing the Grip in Your Hips. And I'm sure all of us have had that experience of sometimes where you've just got a knot in there, a grip. And oftentimes, what causes that is the pelvis trying to stabilize itself. So if this is the pelvis right here, this bowl-shaped structure here, if we get any kind of twisting or tilting of the pelvis, that's going to cause the muscles around the hip. So here's our hip bone, the femur bone. There's all these muscles that attach around here. And if they sense any kind of twist or tilt or rotation in the pelvis, they're going to grip in order to try to stabilize that. So that's one of the primary causes of that kind of feeling of like, I've just got a knot in there. So part of what we'll be doing today is helping to kind of balance out the pelvis so that everything can be supportive. Now we have 6 different, get his arm out of the way, 6 different muscles that attach to this femur bone, and they're like a fan shape. So they kind of go like this, like a fan, all attaching at the femur bone in different places. And they help to cause our hip to go in this outward rotation and this inward rotation. So we'll be doing some movements in which we'll be taking our hips into this range so that we can get the balance from front to back. Does everyone know where their hip joint is? Because there's often a lot of confusion around that. So the hip joint, if you were to put your hands like right in the crease where your pants are, the hip joint is actually this joint right here. So if this person were wearing pants, this would be the hip joint right here. It's not this. This is the hip bone. So there's a difference between the joint, which does this action. It causes that little bone, this kind of is shaped like a hammer, and this would be like the head of the hammer. And that head of the hammer needs to rotate in that little socket that you can see when you move your hip. So we're going to be distinguishing the hip joint from the hip bone. And they're different things, but they work together, obviously. Yeah. What's your question, Susan? Do you have a question? Just unmute yourself.
I do. So could you say something about the SI joint?
Sure.
Because I've had a lot of trouble with that. I actually had a dislocated SI.
The disc was probably in your spine, right? These are the discs that are in between. You can see these gel-shaped kind of things in between the spine. These are discs. In terms of the SI joint, you can probably see it better from the front than the back. Let me get even closer. This joint right here. So this is the ilium bone, which is otherwise called the hip bone, and this is the sacrum. And where they meet is the sacroiliac joint. And that joint is meant to have just a little bit of movement, especially when you walk, because when you walk, it's meant to do this action, that kind of little bit of alternating shifting, right? So even though it's not a big movement, let me turn it from the back so you can see the back view. So that little joint right there between the sacrum and the ilium can get a couple things. It can get stuck up, it can get stuck down, or it can actually twist and rotate. None of those are ideal because there's little tiny grooves in this joint, like a key in a door, and those grooves are lined up between the sacrum and this ilium bone. And if those grooves get mismatched, it causes a lot of spasming of the muscles around here to try to protect that because it's sensing that there's some instability or some mismatching of the grooves. And then a person is not able to have that slight intrinsic motion. And so it kind of freezes, right? And then we end up sort of having a wonky walk. We call wonky walking.
Yes. Thank you.
So all of this, even though this is not particularly about the SI joint, you can't separate any of these, the ilium, the sacrum, so we'll be working and you'll be feeling all of it. Just, if you've got an activated SI joint thing going on, just make sure you stay on the gentle side. You don't want to try to push through anything, just really listening to your body and taking the movements quite slow and just feeling into, you don't want to try to push it where it doesn't want to go. Very important that we stay in honoring of the body's process. Okay, any other questions before we get started on that? Okay, good to go. So why don't you get in your comfortable positions on the floor. I've been reflecting a little bit on my own 30-year journey with somatics. And
oh, I lost her. I lost her.
Okay, I'm muting everyone, so I'm just going to ask everyone to keep them on mute. Somatics is the one thing that freed me from my own habitual patterns that I had become so stuck in. They had been so reinforced that my body actually forgot that it had another choice. And it's through awareness that we actually find that we do have a choice. So when we become curious about how we're moving and how we're standing and how we're feeling and thinking, we begin to notice that there's always an opportunity for choice. That just because something has been repeated again and again and again and it's become a habit, it becomes a program or a pattern. And we tend to go to what has the deepest groove, like a well-worn path in a mountain. So throughout this class, I'm going to be inviting you to just explore your own freedom of choice. And what that means is to give yourself the opportunity to really try new things that might feel a little different. That question I love in doing somatics myself is, what happens if? What happens if I do it a little this way? Or what happens if I try it a little slower? Or what happens if I move my foot a little? And let your body be the feedback instrument. So how easy or effortless is this? And how could it be easier? Remembering that our mantra in somatics is easy does it. Easy does it. And your only job is enjoyment. So as you begin to get comfortable and let your body settle, just coming into this moment, enjoying this moment, where you've set aside this time to just be here with yourself in this exploration. And just letting yourself sense the environment that you're in, the space around the room. And we begin with just the simple pleasure of having contact with this moment just as it is. just as you are. We're dropping out of the movement of mind and down into the body, coming home to our body. Just allowing your awareness to come back to yourself, pulling in all the antenna, all the threads, all the connections that you have out there in the world. And bringing your awareness all the way down into your hips, into your legs, down into the soles of your feet, and into the earth. And we're beginning by just yielding. Yielding is a surrender. We're shifting from doing into just being. So as your body begins to feel its contact with the floor, you're inviting it to receive the support of the ground. And just notice in that invitation, if more of you sinks, imagine the earth was not hard, but it was soft. And the backside of you was soft enough to sink into the softness of the earth, of the ground. And of course, gravity is having that very gentle downward pull that's keeping you right here, planted on the earth. And we can settle into that. This process of yielding is conscious rest, resting on purpose, giving our bodies a moment and our being a moment to be still. Just sensing that stillness within yourself. Opening up the 3,000 inner eyes, the eyes of awareness. Just beginning to notice sensations in the body. What are you noticing? Without commenting on it or judging it or trying to change it, what sensations are you aware of in this moment? You might begin by just sensing your pelvis and the weight of your pelvis. And just noticing if it's a little heavier or deeper on one side. You might begin to sense the weight of your legs, the weight of the bones, becoming aware of the tissues that wrap around the bones. all the way down to the feet and sensing the tops of your feet and the bottoms of your feet. All the little bones in between. Just sinking and melting into the earth. And feeling how the earth meets you and holds you. It's an unconditional holding. And coming up to the sacrum, the triangular bone at the base of your spine. You might begin to sense as you move up your spine, just the curvature of your spine. What shape and how that shape changes curves as you continue up your spine all the way to the neck. And if that shape reminded you of anything, maybe it's like the neck of a giraffe, how would your spine move? Maybe it's like a snake, or maybe it's like a row of dominoes that just is falling one after the other, or a string of pearls, or something else, whatever your spine reminds you of. And now just coming all the way down into your abdomen. And just allow yourself a few deeper, longer breaths. Really allowing a full exhalation. With each exhalation, there's that deeper sinking and settling. Reminding your body that it's okay to just be here now. Becoming aware of how the breath is shape-shifting the inner spaces within your body. Maybe you notice that the ribs widen with the in-breath and narrow with the out-breath. Or maybe you notice a subtle motion happening in your spine. Or maybe you're more interested in just the soothing rhythm of your breath, always in, always out. So as we now transition into movement, I invite you to stay connected using the support of the ground in our movements today, continuing to return to this gentle flow of your breath as a resource. And just again, asking yourself that question, what happens if? And allow yourself to add some nuances to our movements today. So with your legs straight, if you could bend your arms so the elbows are bent, and then backs of the hands maybe touching the floor. So your arms are sort of in this goal post, what I call a goal post position. So again, your elbows are bent, but your hands are resting on the floor, maybe, a foot away from your face. And then make sure that your hands are on the floor. The backs of your hands are touching the floor. So your hands are on either side of your face. And of course, in all of these, if any position with the arms that I invite you into is not comfortable for your shoulder, then please adjust it to make sure it's comfortable for your shoulders. So that could mean the elbows have less of a bend. That could mean maybe your arms are a little closer to your body. There's all kinds of variations of where the arms can be, but comfort is always the most important thing. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is begin to take a nice full breath into the belly. And as your belly is expanding, have the feeling that you're rocking yourself down towards your tailbone. So the belly is filling, you're expanding the breath, turn your toes outward. So both feet are pointing away from the midline. This is with straight legs if you can do it. And with your exhale, just begin to release the back to the floor, empty the belly, and let your toes turn inward. So I want you to see if you can feel in this position how we're including the hips in a particular way. As you breathe into the belly, there's a slight arcing of the back. There's a turn out of both feet. And by turning out, both feet are pointing away from the center. And then as you exhale, you're just letting the belly empty. The back finds the floor and the toes point inward. We'll see if you can coordinate this sort of rolling across the heels of your feet. As you breathe in and the toes are turned out, you have sort of the Charlie Chaplin stance with your feet. And then as you exhale and empty the belly, your toes are turning in like pigeon toe. Now there's a little nuance we can add here to amplify this. So the next time you breathe into your belly and your toes are turning out, barely moving your feet, but just have the sense that you're almost slightly bending your knees a little toward your elbows. So you can just feel how that amplifies the sense of arch in your back. And then as you exhale, release that and go back to pigeon toe, toes inward. So you're going belly expanding, toes turned out into Charlie Chaplin, little tiny bend of the knees as if you were just kind of trying to drag your heels toward your butt. And then exhale, release the back completely, letting the back find the earth and sink into it as the toes turn in. Okay, we're going to add one more thing here with the arms now. So this time, breathe into the belly, same movement with the feet. You're going into Charlie Chaplin, toes out, slight bend in the knees. Also have your elbows kind of engage toward your knees so you can feel your chest lift. So that means there's sort of a drawing of your elbows toward your sides, just enough to feel the chest lift. Exhale, turn the toes in, bring the arms together, palms touching, elbows touching, feel the front of the body contracting. Back to opening into the goalpost, toes out, arms spreading, chest lifting, knees slightly pulling into that towards your butt. All those elements, and then exhale, toes in, arms together. See if you can begin to sense your deeper core participating here. Take your time, go slow. So remember, the job is enjoyment, and easy does it. So notice where you're over efforting and just see, what can I do less of? It's all just about sensing the body, not with high volume, but just in that nice melodious volume where you can feel in an enjoyable way. Okay, and complete the one that you're on. And then lower your arms so they're on either side of your body. And you might just begin to check in with that little bit of movement that we've done. If there's a difference in the way your lower back is meeting the floor. In other words, how much space is there between your lower back and the floor? And has that changed? So now bend your right knee, standing on your right foot. And throughout the rest of this, I'm going to be asking you to lift your foot at certain times. And what I mean by that is when I ask you to lift your foot, you're going to lift everything except the heel. So the only thing that stays anchored to the ground is the heel. So go ahead and lift your right foot, keep the heel grounded. And what I'm going to ask you to do is roll onto the back of the heel so that the toes are going to point outward to the left. Inward, sorry. Inward to the left. And notice how the knee is going to follow where your toes are pointed. So you're going to roll across the heel of your foot so the toes are pointed inward, and let your knee also point inward. So this is going to be really good for the sacroiliac joint as well. And now go ahead and roll your foot so that you're rolling onto the heel and your toes are pointing to the left, and letting your heel point outward. So we're going to go outward and inward. Just rolling across the heel of your right foot. The knee is following the foot. If the toes are pointing out, so you're doing opposite. So I want the toes to go with the knee. So you're not twisting your foot opposite. If you're rolling across the heel so the toes are pointing in the same direction. No. Hang on. So you're rolling across the heel, the toes pointing out, and you so it's
Not a twist.
it's not a twist. So that's a distinction we need to make. It's not a twist, it's a windshield wiper-like motion. So if you're confused about that, look at Bruce. So see how the toes are going in the same, you're just rolling across the backside of the heel. Okay, very good. Now, what we're going to do. So right now, we're pretty much working within the range of the hip joint. Now we're going to take it the next level, and we're going to still stay on this heel of your right foot. You're still doing the windshield wiper-like motion, but let the straight leg follow the same movement. So as the toes on the right point to the left, let the left leg toes point to the left, and see how that begins to create a rolling motion across your whole pelvis. So your pelvis is going to rock and roll here. Rolling across the backside of the pelvis. Both your feet are pointing in the same direction in order to help that happen. And just see how you can work with this in your own body in a way that feels really pleasurable. Because once you get that roll in your pelvis side to side, it feels pretty nice. We could invite the head to complete this spiral by just letting the eyes and the head look opposite from the point of the feet. So the eyes going opposite from the knee and just feeling your own rock and roll of your pelvis. Okay, and then go ahead and straighten your legs. Just taking a somatic pause here to sense inside the effect of that. Just notice the sensations that you're aware of. Allow your body to give you the feedback. Maybe it feels like it was too much. So then you'll know on the next side, you'll want to do a little dial down the volume a little bit. We always have these volume controls, and the volume controls are the loudness of the movement. In other words, how much effort we're putting into it, and also the dial of slowness, like the speed. All of those things we can play with to find that sweet spot where our body is just in tune. Okay, so let's bend the other knee. Have the left knee bent. And you're going to lift your foot, everything except the heel. The heel's still planted, and you're just going to do this roll across your heel in such a way that when the toes go in, the knee goes in. And then when the toes go out, the knee goes out. And the other leg's just staying passive right now because we're just really focusing on the area of the hip joint. And of course, this kind of movement is giving a lot of lubrication, a lot of synovial fluid into the joint itself. And give yourself the opportunity to really slow it down so that you can feel more. Once you feel like you've got a little bit of a sense of the rhythm of that, start to include the straight leg, which means both toes will point to the right and both knees will point that way and then to the left. And the whole intention here is to begin to rock and roll the pelvis. So the whole rolling surface of the back of the pelvis, shifting the weight side to side, and inviting the neck to go opposite from the knees. And just finding that nice, pleasurable range that your body enjoys. Then go ahead and straighten that leg. Just begin to notice what you're more aware of in your hips, your pelvis, your spine. All right, and now please bend both knees. You can have a little bit of width between your legs as well. If you were to relax both legs over to the right, so just let both knees relax easily over to the right, and then just stay there. And we're going to focus on the right foot for the moment. So feel how the right foot has contact with the floor along the outside edge of the right foot. See if you can notice that the little toe side of the foot is touching. And what I want you to do is with that outer edge of your right foot, start to draw a circle somewhere along the floor. And just begin to make either a smaller circle or a bigger circle, whatever is available for you. But one thing to notice is how might your pelvis help you? So it's the right outside edge of your foot that's making the circle on the floor. How could your pelvis maybe move in such a way that it perhaps helps you? Maybe there's a little bit of motion that begins to help make this circle. So it's not just the hip joint that's doing this, but the pelvis is also playing. Nice, slow, easy circle. Good. And then bring both your knees back to where you started, pointing toward the ceiling. And now let both knees relax over to the left, but we're still going to play on the right with the right foot. Only this time you're on the inside edge of your foot, the big toe side. So the circle is going to be made with the big toe side of your foot. And you're just being gentle and delicate and easeful and seeing, how could I make a circle if my foot had some paint on it and I wanted to draw a circle, and see if the pelvis is participating in some way? How might it help? Okay, and then bring both knees back to vertical again. And as a little interlude, we'll just let the knees go side to side in an easy, relaxed way. Just giving a little time for that to integrate. And then the next time your knees are over to the left side, stay there. Make contact with the outside edge of your left foot and see if you can draw a circle on the floor with your left foot. Is there any way that there's a motion within the pelvis that can help coordinate the movement that you're making with your hip? And you're going really slow, so you're investigating into some of those deeper, maybe unused places. And then bring the knees back to vertical. go to the knees going to the right. And now you're going to use the inside edge of your left foot, the big toe side, to draw a circle on the floor. If it feels hard or feels clunky, just ask him, how might my pelvis help me here? Is there any kind of participation? Letting your own body teach you that coordination. Lovely. And then just go back to the interlude of letting both knees relax side to side. And then take a moment to pause. And so really we're giving the body lots of different ways of exploring options and choices here. Sometimes we don't even realize that we have another choice because our patterns become so repeated that it feels like we only have one way of doing things. So just notice the effect of that in your body. Like, what's opening up? What feels more spacious? What feels maybe more alive? And we're always, of course, listening to the feedback. The body will tell us if it's like feeling like something was too much or too fast, or we did it too long. And we use that feedback so the next time we can turn the volume down. So now if you could bend your right knee and have the left arm kind of upward overhead, kind of in a straight, wherever it's comfortable on the floor, resting upward. Okay, so we're going to begin. This is a really nice movement. We're going to begin by pressing down into the ground with your right foot so that you can use the push of the right foot into the earth to lift the hip so that the pelvis begins to roll like a bowl over to the other side. And then return. Now, the beauty of this movement is if you could think of your knee, your right knee is reaching a little toward your foot. In other words, the thigh and the knee are lengthening toward your foot. You're going to get this gapping open of your hip joint, which is just such a lovely feeling. So you can place your foot anywhere that feels useful. If it's too close to your butt and you don't like it, change it. If it's too far away, just feel, where's my most stable anchor here? And I'm going to use the terminology of spoking because it is sort of like if the center of our body were the center of like a wheel and our arms and legs are the spokes. We're thinking of this spoking leg, in this case, the knee, as reaching toward the foot, and you're lengthening out from the center. Now, what I'd like you to do as you repeat that movement again is look towards your left arm. So as the knee is spoking toward your foot, reach with the left arm and look toward the spoking left arm. The arm's on the floor. It's just lengthening upward overhead, getting this nice diagonal reach from the left arm all the way out through the right knee. And then returning back to where you began on the floor. So this is just such a nice feeling when you get that length by spoking the knee away from the center and the arm, and there's this diagonal lengthening across the whole front of the body. The head looking at your wrist if it's possible, so you get that nice extension in your neck. Now, the arm's not reaching toward the ceiling, it's just resting on the floor and it's reaching, supported by the floor, it's reaching overhead. Okay, now come back to where you started. Don't change any position that you're in. The arm's still up there on the left, but we're going to change our focus to the right arm. So this time still pushing down with the right foot and spoking with the right knee. This time reaching with the right arm as if you wanted to touch the heel of your right foot. So you're kind of curving your body a little bit to the right. And then relax back down to the floor. So again, it's this nice lift of the pelvis, that opening in front of the hip joint, that reaching of the right arm toward the right heel, feeling that curvature, the beautiful curve of your spine. And taking your time, go slow. So this time on the next one, we're going to lift the hip as you have been doing, still spoking with the right knee, reaching with the knee toward the foot, and stay lifted, stay up there. And see if you can reach with the left arm in the overhead position, and then with the right arm down toward the foot. And just feel maybe there's a slight up-down motion with your pelvis as you're doing this, but just feel that translation of movement through the reach of one arm and up through the reach of the other with your head looking at the reaching arm. And just letting the pelvis go up and down as needed. Nice and easy, no strain. And then go ahead and return to the floor, straighten your leg and rest. And just once again, returning to that yielding. So that place of, this is our bodies physiologically thrive and have balance when we do activity and we're engaged in the doing of movement and then pause and rest. So it's a balance of activity to non-activity, to from doing to return to being. So in these moments of pause, they are just important as the movements themselves, because this is the time of integration, the time of really feeling the moment of rest where the body can make use of the learning and process it. And you get to just really sink back into that pause of stillness. All right, so let's bend the left leg. The right arm will be up overhead along the floor, resting on the floor. And just begin by pressing with the left foot, spoking with that knee. So the spoking is the reaching of the knee toward your foot, seeing how all your weight can shift over to the left, to the right. And returning and repeating that a couple times. And then what we're going to do is add the spoking of the right arm at the same time that you're pushing down with the foot and lifting the hip. You're spoking the knee. So there's this diagonal length from the right arm and the fingers, which are extending upward as if you're reaching all the way down and out through the left knee. And then return to the floor. You can think of, I like also the image of a star extending energy in different directions. So here the directions, we've got the knee and the arm both reaching, extending energy out from the center. And your head is just looking at the reaching arm. Just finding that place of pleasure, right, where it just feels good to you to have that openness in the front of the body. We're not going past that into tension and contraction. We're just staying within the invitation of our body in this moment. Okay, and now let's shift our focus to the other arm, the downward arm. Same foot, still pushing down, spoking with the knee toward the foot, and then adding the reach of the left arm toward the heel of the foot. So there's a curvature of your spine. Now, not every movement in somatics is, and we're not trying to time the breath with movement, but this particular movement does facilitate, it's a type of movement that could work very well with the breath. So with the inhalation, there's that expansion where you're lifting and it allows the belly to bring in breath. And then with the exhale, there's just that receding, that return, like a leaf falling back to the earth where you're emptying. So if you want to play with that coordination, of the breath and see how that is for you. All right, so on the next movement, you're going to push down with your foot and lift your hip and stay lifted. And then we're just going to do the alternating arm reach, where the headward arm reaches and then the arm reaches toward your foot. That alternating arm spoking as the head is looking toward the reaching arm. And perhaps just feeling maybe this slight lifting and lowering of the pelvis as it's in this dance, going up and down. And then return. Release and relax. Just beginning to notice once again, how is the contact of my body? Is it changed? What's my relationship to the whole backside of me, to the floor? How does the weight of my bones feel? The imprint. And just notice if you feel the same size or if you feel wider, longer, heavier, lighter. All right, so bend your right knee. Keep your left leg long. I love this movement for the hip. It's one of my favorites. It's called thread the needle. So what we're going to do is, again, use that same movement we have just practiced of pushing down with the right foot to lift the hip. So that's the first step. As you use the push down of the right foot to lift the hip, that will be our first motion. So the next time you do that, push down with your foot, lift your hip, start to bend the straight leg knee out to the side. So your left knee is bending into like a frog leg position, sliding it along the floor so you've got a bent knee. And let's just re-straighten the leg again. We'll do just that much. We'll see if you can now coordinate. Pushing down with your right foot, bending the left knee out to the side. And you can still have that little bit of spoking action with your right knee if you really want to get some space in that hip joint. Good. And come back down. And then on the next movement, I'll take you to the next step. So this time, push down with your right foot, lift your hip, bend your left knee out to the side, and then slide your left arm upward overhead. Let your left foot sneak behind your right heel and see if you can reach with your right arm to touch your left heel. So you're kind of curving your body to touch your heel. Good, and that's threading the needle. When you stick your foot behind your other foot, return to the floor. Okay, same thing. There's a lot of steps here, so we'll repeat it. Bend your right knee, push down with your right foot to lift your hip. Slide your left knee out to the side into the frog position. As your left arm slides up overhead, and you're going to sneak or thread the needle by sliding your foot behind the heel, your left foot behind the heel of your right foot. Reaching then with your arm as if you wanted to touch your foot. So you're curving your spine. Good. And then unthread the needle. We'll do that again. Push down with your foot. Left knee bending out to the side. Right arm spoking upward. Left arm spoking downward as you slide your left foot behind the right heel. And if that's too hard for you, you may have to change your foot position so your foot's not so close to your butt, or it may have to be more out to the side. And of course, when I say touching the foot, you may or may not touch it, but you're moving in that direction. Okay, very nice. Well done. So let's bend the left knee. The right leg is long. And push down with your left foot, lifting the pelvis, letting it roll over to the other side. So that's step one. Step two is, while you're doing that, is to bend the right knee out to the side into a frog leg position. And then straighten the leg as you return. Now, coordinating the movement of the hip lifting on the left and the right knee bending out to the side. Now, step three will be to do both of those things as you slide the right arm upward overhead. Slide the foot of the right foot behind the heel of the left one as you reach with your arm to touch your foot. Just moving in that direction. So the left arm reaching to touch the right foot. Good. Make any adjustments you need to make in order for this to work for your body. You can always change the way your foot is positioned. You can change how far you go. Once again, pushing down with the foot, the hip lifts. The right knee bending out to the right. Right arm sliding upward as you sneak your right foot just behind the heel of the left one. And reach with your left arm down towards your foot. All right, finish the one that you're on. Just with the 3,000 eyes inside, noticing what are you aware of? Tuning into the sensation channel, noticing what feels warmer, tingly, wider. Without interpreting it at all or even understanding what it means, just noticing what your body is feeling. Okay, let's roll over onto the right side. So you can use your bottom arm as a pillow, or you can use a pillow as a pillow, but use your top arm with the hand on the floor in front of your chest. This will just give us a little bit of stability. Your hand is on the floor in front of your chest. Your top leg is going to be straight. Now, we began the class where we are rolling onto the heel. We're going to do that again. So roll onto the heel of your foot so that your toes are pointing up toward the ceiling. And just begin to become aware of that whole turn of your leg, the turn of the femur bone, and the pelvis is opening a little bit, and then come back. I'm just doing that a couple times, rolling onto the heel of the foot so that your foot's pointing up toward the ceiling. Now, the next time you've rolled onto your heel and your toes are pointing upward, stay right there and see if you can slide your heel gently, slowly toward your butt. So the kneecap is more or less pointing up toward the ceiling. You're just sliding your knee to a bent position and stay right in that position. Now, one of the big causes of a lot of hip pain and lower back pain is the gluteal muscles tend to get quiet, or they get sensory motor amnesia. They get inactive because we sit on them a lot. I want you to take your top hand and permission to spank yourself on your butt. We're going to wake up those proprioceptors. So you're just hitting that large butt muscle, just giving it, you can tap or you can just give it a nice pat, like you would kind of pat a horse on its butt, just waking up those muscles. Okay, once you've done a little bit of that, you can replace your hand, but see if you can actually squeeze, like make a fist out of your butt in such a way that you're pressing that hip joint a little forward. So if you're really able to find your butt muscle and squeeze it like you're making a fist out of it, it's a kind of a small micro movement, but there's a feeling of the front of the hip opening just a little bit. And so you're just going to pulse this on and relax it off. On and off. And you're repeating it until it's clear. Like sometimes it's mushy and the movement feels cloudy. We want it to feel like you can clearly switch the on button on and then switch it off. All right, and then slide your leg back to straight again. And we'll do that one more time. Roll onto the heel of your foot. Slide your knee to bend, kneecap pointing toward the ceiling. And just see if you can find a way to really imagine that you had a fist inside your butt and you're just squeezing that fist tight and then relaxing it. Just see if you can feel that little bit of gapping open in the front of the hip joint. And then slide the leg back to straight. So we've just been opening the hip in the external rotation. Now we're going to go into the internal movement of the hip. So this time, slide your straight leg up towards your other, bend the knee, and like you're bringing the knees back together again, both of them being bent. So they'll be stacked one on top of each other. But this time, lift your top foot away from your bottom foot, like you're trying to show your foot to the ceiling. And see if you can feel how that moves your pelvis and your hip inward, forward. Straighten the leg in between. So straighten the leg all the way back to straight. Draw the knee toward your chest so the knees are touching again, and lift your top foot away from your bottom foot. Try to show the bottom of your foot to the ceiling. And now what I really want to do here is go from one to the other. So first we're going to start with a straight leg. We're going to turn so the toes are pointing up toward the ceiling. Draw your heel towards your butt. Take a moment there to squeeze the fist inside your butt, activating it, and then slide your leg back to straight. And then bring your knees to bent and together and lift the top foot away from the bottom foot. And then straighten. So this is really balancing out, back of the hip to the front of the hip. Nice and slow. Easy does it. Okay, the next time your leg is straight, to complete this sequence, we're going to do hip extension now, which means with a straight leg, you're going to almost in slow motion kick behind you. So extend your straight leg back behind you, leading with the heel. And then imagine that you could use your heel to draw a circle on a wall behind you. So you're pushing back, and you're using that heel to draw a circle on an imaginary wall behind you with a straight leg. The leg is straight and the heel is drawing the circle. So there's hip extension, straight leg, no bend in the knee at all. And the feeling would be to keep pushing back with the heel, as if you could really feel something behind you that you're pushing against. Okay, excellent. And now roll over back onto your back. So you're on your back, and we're just going to take a moment to feel, since we've explored some different movements with one side of the body, just sense and feel the difference, if there is one, between the two sides. Noticing the length of the legs. Noticing the weight of your legs. And noticing any subtle differences that you're aware of between the two sides. All right, and then let's roll to the other side. So you're lying on your left side. Your right hand is just on the floor right in front, so you've got a little bit of stability there. The top leg is straight. And we're going to just start with that simple rolling motion over the heel. So the toes are going to point up as you roll across the back of the heel and then return. It's nice and simple, but feel how that has a whole chain reaction from your foot to your leg to your hip to your pelvis. Maybe you've been sensing it in your spine. All right, and then once you've got your toes in that upward pointed position, start to draw your heel towards your butt. The kneecap more or less pointing toward the ceiling. So you're in this bent knee position, standing on your foot. And now we're going to spank ourselves. We're going to give ourselves a little pat on the bum to wake up those gluteal muscles. Okay, once you've gotten some more proprioception in there, we'll now see if we can find them and squeeze to make a fist. When I said this is about releasing the grip in your hip, one of the ways to release a grip is to grip it more. So we're really tightening and then we're softening, and see if you can fully soften and relax. So this is a very strong muscle of the pelvis and the hip. It's really one of the muscles that we use if we run or jump. It's a powerful muscle, and we want it to be responsive in order to give our body the support that it needs. And like I said, when we sit a lot, they can get kind of inactive. So we squeeze and release with this sense of really feeling the spreading open of the front of the hip joint. Okay, and slide the leg to straight. Now do that one more time. Roll onto the heel of your foot, taking your time to slide the knee to bend, dragging the heel along the floor, staying right there, and gripping the hip, squeezing it and releasing. Okay, and slide the legs straight again. And now we're going to go to the other part of the movement, which is internal rotation. So bring your knee to a bent position, so it's right on top of your bottom knee. Lift your top foot away from your bottom foot, like you're trying to show the bottom of your foot to the ceiling. And just see how you can sense that motion of rolling the hip a little bit forward. And then straighten the leg out in between. So we go back to a straight leg. Sliding the knee to bent, folding right there at the hip joint, and then lifting the top foot away from the bottom foot. The knees stay together in this movement. So knees are together and it's just the shin and the lower foot that is lifting away from the bottom foot. Straighten the leg. Let's go back and forth between these two movements. So turning onto the heel of the foot, drawing the heel towards your butt, taking a moment to make a fist out of your butt and squeeze it. And then straightening that leg, drawing the knee to bent, keeping the knees together and lifting the top foot away from the bottom foot. Show your foot to the ceiling. So really slowly tuning into the way your pelvis is moving. So you're inside your body. You're not just mechanically doing a movement, you're feeling the movement. Back and forth. All right, and now with a straight leg, keep it straight. And here's where we're going to imagine like a horse, we're going to kick behind us in slow motion, really squeezing the gluteal muscle. And then imagine that you had some paint or charcoal on the bottom of your foot and you're going to draw a circle on the wall behind you. It's like that pushing back through the heel. Keeps opening the front of the hip joint, pushing back, and making that circle with a straight leg. All right. And then roll back over onto your back. So I want to do one final balancing movement, working with both hips together since we've been doing one side and then the other side. So if you could bend your knees. Now, if I were to ask you to roll onto the outside edges of your feet, so you're just lifting the inside arches, and feel how your knees kind of will open when you do that. They'll separate a little bit. So you're on the little toe sides of your feet. From there, push down with that outside edge of your feet, and lift into a bridge. So lift your pelvis away from the floor. Stay lifted and roll onto the inside edges of your feet so that your knees come together, and lower your pelvis back down. So we're going to do that again. Roll onto the outside edges of your feet. Your feet don't necessarily have to come together for this. They can be apart. You're just on the outside edges of your feet. Lift into the bridge, pelvis detached from the floor. Roll onto the inside edges of your feet, the big toe sides, knees come together, and lower the pelvis back down. Repeat again. Outside edges, knees apart, bridge lift, inside edges, big toe side, knees together, and lower. And one last time. All right, well done. Now just check in with your body and see if there's any movements that are just being asked for. Is there anything your body needs in order to feel satisfied, to feel complete, to feel satiated? Just let your body inform you, and whatever it is you need to do, just allow yourself the time for this. And then once you feel complete, you can just stay inward. Allow yourself to once again yield into a place of rest. Just bringing yourself, melting into stillness. And sinking into the pleasure of receiving support from the ground. Just sensing the inward spaciousness within your body, inviting in spaciousness. Releasing the need to change or to fix anything, and just embrace, soften, open to your soma's process of reorganizing in its own way and in its own time. Just notice where in your body you might feel a sense of ease or a sense of well-being. It might be a global sense, or there might be somewhere specific that you can connect with. Allow yourself to receive the goodness of that. Sense of connection, sense of well-being, or even sense of everything's okay, I'm content. And allow your cells, your tissues, your organs to steep, to marinate in that sense of well-being. And soaking that in. And now together as a group, whether you're listening live and doing this right here or later in the recording, we can still amplify. We can really turn up the volume of these sensations of goodness and radiate that out as if you're sending it out as a blessing. May all beings experience this goodness. May all beings experience this ease. May all beings have access to this connection with their selves. As we soak in the goodness ourselves and receive it, we can radiate it out to all beings everywhere.